Ladies and gentlemen, damas y caballeros, I want to start this video off with a not so happy story. About a year ago, one night I was headed home after having dinner with a friend, and about 1 minute into getting on the highway, I looked in the distance and I saw these white lights headed straight towards me. And I had this split-second realization that this pickup truck was driving in the wrong side of traffic coming straight at me. And I was going about 60 miles an hour, and I just reacted. I made a quick left turn to get off the truck. My tires screeched, the car swerved, and the headlights turned off. And about 10 seconds later, I was okay. I gained control over my car and just continued driving. And I cannot express how close this was to being a head-on collision going on the highway. And as terrifying as it was, I didn't call 911, I just kept driving. And it took a few minutes until I realized I almost died. I was one wrong move away from a head-on collision going 60 to 70 miles an hour on the highway against a pickup truck. It was one of the most terrifying things I have ever seen in my life. And that experience made me realize how precious life is. It made me realize that this could literally be over in a second. And it got me to reflect on my own life. And it got me to reflect on money's place in my own life. And after that experience, I spent a couple weeks just reflecting and thinking about how I want to live my life and spend my money going forward. And in this video, I want to share what that near-death experience about a year ago taught me and how it changed my view on money. So let's begin. Lesson 1, don't use money in extremes. I think in many ways, society pushes us to live our lives in these extreme ways. And when you live your life in an extreme way, you end up being very aggressive and very emotional in your decision-making process. And I think that when it comes to money, most people use their money in very extreme ways, where on the money scale, the majority of people lie here on the consumerist side, and a smaller minority of people lie here on the extremely cheap side. And neither one of these extremes is correct, because on the consumerist side, there's a lot of waste, financial hardship, and lack of freedom. Whereas on the cheap side, there's deprivation, scarcity, and isolation. And most of us, including myself, end up living life in one of these extremes, leading to a highly unbalanced life. But after this experience, it taught me the importance of finding the balance between the two extremes, because if you think about it, neither one of these extremes is sustainable in the long term. If you choose one of these extremes, you'll be a slave to money either way, just in different ways. I think that life is just this balancing act where you have to find the middle somewhere. And I think that when it comes to money, the middle is about being intentional, focusing on value, and not being wasteful. And finding the middle ground between the two extremes, I think, is important because it allows you to enjoy today and at the same time not screw your future self over. Lesson 2, use money as a tool to enrich your life. I want you to just imagine a hammer. Now, by itself, a hammer really does nothing. What makes a hammer useful is when you're actively doing something, whether that's putting a picture on the wall, or building a table, or even taking out nails. A hammer is just a tool that allows you to do something else. And I think this is the same with money, because by itself, money does nothing. What makes money useful is when you're actively doing something with it, whether that's paying for a place to live, or buying an experience, or taking a risk. Money is just a tool that allows you to do something else, but I think that so many people get caught up in worshiping money that they end up just saving all their money and just watching it pile up and doing nothing with it. And it's sort of like collecting hammers and just watching those pile up. Although you have so many hammers, they're not serving you and they're not improving your life. And when I had that near-death experience, I had a large sum of money, but I wasn't using it to enrich my life. I was just watching it pile up. And it's important to be responsible and save, but also at some point you have to use it to enrich your life. I mean, if something else happened that night, that money would have never served me. You have to actively pick up the hammer and use it for it to be useful. And I think this is the same concept with money. I think you have to decide how you're going to use the tool of money to enrich your life, whether that's having a better quality of life, or buying an experience, or using it to back you up to take a risk. Money by itself is just a piece of paper with people's faces on it. What makes money useful is when you're actively using it as a tool to enrich your life. And as I said, you need to be financially responsible and save. I'm not just saying blow all your money. What I'm saying is don't get caught up on just saving and watching your money pile up, because if you do that, then your money will never serve you. You need to view money as a tool and use it to enrich your life. Lesson 3. While you're here, you might as well take chances. We often put off what we want to do this year, even in the next 5 to 10 years, because we have this idea that somehow the future will be easier, that if we pay our dues right now, in the future, we could take an extended break, explore a new career path, or enjoy retirement. We sacrifice so much of today believing that somehow the future is just going to be much better and much easier. And I think that when you live your life this way, you're taking life for granted. And I'll never forget, a week or two after that experience, I was in this very bizarre state of mind. I was almost just out of my head. And I was looking at everyone else, and it just felt like you wanted to shake everyone to wake up, because it just seemed like everyone was taking life for granted and thinking that the next 20 years are guaranteed, and people were sacrificing so much of today on the bet that they could do it in the future. There's this quote that goes, "The biggest risk in life is not doing what you want on the bet that you can buy yourself the freedom to do it later." You know, we hear these stories every single day of these spontaneous things happening to other people. And it takes a near head-on collision, feet away from head-on collision, to realize that this stuff could happen to you too. And every day is just a blessing. And while you're here, you might as well take chances. Because you never know what's going to happen in life, and money is complicated and we're all in different situations. But this experience made me wake up from the idea that tomorrow is guaranteed and this stuff can also happen to me, and to start taking action sooner than later, because you never know what's going to happen. And while you're here, you might as well take chances. Lesson 4. Collect as many experiences as early on as you can. A while back, I read this book, Die with Zero, and in the book, the author talks about how in life, we often have the belief that we put off experiences at an early age, so when we get older, we can have more experiences. But the author argues that we should collect as many experiences as early on as possible and not delay experiences, because when you have experiences early on, the memory serves you longer. And he calls this concept memory dividends. Now let me explain how this works using my own life. When I was 19, I took a 3-month backpacking trip through Europe. I'm 29 now, and that trip is long gone, but I've had the past 10 years to reminisce on the memory from that trip. If I live to 90, I will have 70 years to reminisce on that memory. Whereas if I waited to 65 to take the trip to Europe, I would only have 25 years to reminisce on the experience. And although that experience is far in the past, I still get these dividends, these memory dividends that bring me joy when I reminisce on that experience. And so it makes sense to get experience early on rather than delay them, because the earlier you get them, the more time they can enrich your life. When I had that experience on the highway, it made me realize that tomorrow isn't guaranteed, so you shouldn't delay having experiences in life. You should take chances, you should try different things and just experience life. And if you are fortunate enough to make it to old age, you'll have all these memory dividends that made you live an incredibly rich life. And when it comes to experience, I think the sooner the better. Lesson 5. Don't take yourself too seriously, because nobody will make it out alive. I think in life, we can fall into this sleeping state where life just becomes a grind and we do the same thing every day and take ourselves so seriously. And it takes a moment, like a near head-on collision going 60 to 70 miles on the highway, to wake you up and make you realize that you are going to die one day. And as much as we like to think that spontaneous stuff only happens to other people, that day could come a lot sooner than you think. And once that day comes, the universe is going to continue going on like it has the last 13 billion years. We spend a huge chunk of our lives stressing out over work and money. But in the end, that stuff doesn't even really matter because the universe is just going to continue going on without you. What really matters is the relationships you've made, how you've treated other people, and the experiences that you've had on your short time on this planet. I think that those are the things that truly matter and that we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously with work or money because nobody's going to make it out of this thing alive. And whenever I get stressed out, I go back to that experience on the highway that was so close. And it inspires me to live more for today because it taught me that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. So we shouldn't stress out too much. We shouldn't take ourselves too seriously. And we should use money as a tool to enrich our lives because that stuff could happen to us. And with that, muchas gracias. Que tengan un buen día. Video 120. Nos vemos, chicos.